140th 5th London Field Regiment, Royal Artillery, The 140th 5th London Field Regiment, Royal Artillery, was a unit of Britain's Territorial Army formed in 1939, just before World War II. During the Battle of France in 1940, it participated in defending Cassel to protect the British Expeditionary Force's evacuation from Dunkirk. Barely half the men escaped to England, where the regiment was rebuilt. It later served in home defense in Tunisia, and after conversion to the medium artillery role in Italy, where it was disbanded. Organization. After the Munich crisis of 1938, the part-time Territorial Army TA was rapidly doubled in size. On 1 May 1939, the 92nd 5th London Field Regiment, Royal Artillery, created a duplicate 140th Field Regiment, RA, by separating the 366th 10th London Battery at Kennington Lane. The new regimental headquarters RHQ was established at 63 Southside, Clapham Common. It was officially given the 5th London subtitle in 1942. The 92nd and 140th Field Regiments were both unattached units in London District. Equipment. The British Army in 1939, unlike the German Army, was fully motorized in consequence of a mechanization initiative. At the time, field regiments were organized as an RHQ and 2 batteries, each of 12 guns. These were 18-pounder guns of World War I pattern, towed behind tractor units, mainly Maurice or Guy quads, with an ammunition limber positioned between tractor and gun. The 18-pounder was a quick-firing field gun with the shell and cartridge fixed together. It was based on a World War I weapon that had been modernized and was mounted on a Mark Roman II carriage with rubber tires. The gun barrel was nickel steel with a single-motion screw breech incorporating a cartridge extractor. The sights were on the right of the gun and incorporated a telescope and clinometer for indirect firing in an arc. The maximum effective range of the weapon was normally 3.5 miles, 4.88.0 km, although in the last days of the Battle of Cassel some of the firing was done over open sights directly at German tanks only a few yards distant. In 1939-40, British field artillery tactics were organized to provide groups of gun-strong points, usually camouflaged by trees, supported by communication tracks to supplies and ammunition at the rear, and with forward observation posts linked by telegraph wires. In 1939-40, a battery was subdivided into 3 troops, each troop with 4 guns and shared radio communications. Each gun would have been crewed by 6 men, a sergeant in overall charge, a No. 3 who was his right-hand man, a lance bombardier who laid and fired the gun, numbers 2 and 4 who loaded and rammed the shells, and numbers 5 and 6 who fetched and carried the ammunition. 140th Field Regiment's vehicles were identified by a number 10 in white on a red and blue background. Battle of France. At the outbreak of war in September 1939, the 140th Field Regiment mobilized under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Cedric Odling. In November 1939, after the soldiers had been equipped and had finished basic training in London and Dursley, Gloucestershire, the regiment was assigned to join the British Expeditionary Force as army troops, not assigned to a particular formation. On 2 March 1940, the regiment left Dursley and landed at Le Havre, in France, on 6 March 1940. By 9 May 1940, the regiment had been assigned to I Corps. Following the German invasion of the Low Countries on 10 May, the BF advanced north into Belgium to defend the line of the Dial River under Plan D. The regiment allegedly fired the first British artillery round during the Dial line defense. But the German army broke through the Ardennes to the east, forcing the BF to withdraw to the line of the Escaut River. On the evening of 16 May 1940, the regiment withdrew via Brussels, Ninove, and Tournai to the Escaut line, as the French military situation worsened to the south. The policy was to superimpose Army field artillery regiments onto divisional artillery to give enhanced firepower as required. During the fighting on the Escaut, the regiment was in action with 42nd East Lancashire Infantry Division at Wanahane, where it suffered its first battle casualties and had 3 guns knocked out by enemy shell fire. On 22 May 1940, the regiment withdrew across the Franco-Belgian border into the French village of Saint-Gouin and Mélentois. The 2 batteries operated together as a single fighting unit until 23 May 1940. After then, as the British and French military situation worsened further, they were separated and were assigned to different sectors. 366 Battery, under the command of Major Brooks, was assigned to defend the eastern escape corridor to Dunkirk and followed a route via Seclin and Lille to the Messines Ridge in support of the British defence of the Ypres-Camines line. The battery was positioned near the village of Wytschaete during 27-28 May 1940, then withdrew under cover of darkness on 28 May 1940, having disabled its guns, and successfully reached the Dunkirk beaches on 29 May 1940. 367 Battery, together with RHQ, under the command of Colonel C.J. Odling, was assigned to protect the Western Corridor and was initially assigned to Mac Force under the command of Lieutenant General Noel Mason MacFarlane on 23 May 1940, before joining Summerforce at the French hilltop town of Cassel under the command of Brigadier Nigel. Summerforce included units of Brigadier Somerset's own 145th Infantry Brigade, 2nd Battalion Gloucestershire Regiment, 4th Battalion Oxfordshire, and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry, together with armoured cars of the East Riding Yeomanry, and various support units, including the 140th Field Regiment and 5th Regiment, Royal. Its role was to hold the line from Cassel to Hazebrouck at the outer perimeter of the Dunkirk pocket. Last stand at Cassel. During 4 days, 25-29 May, Cassel was effectively converted into a tank-proof fortress with a series of surrounding picket villages, including the bunker at Le Pekel, Bavinchove, and Zijpien, which were all doggedly defended. By 27 May, Cassel was surrounded and there was heavy fighting around the hilltop town, with 140 field regiments, 18 PDRs doing great execution. On 29 May, the enemy closed in with tanks. 5 of these were knocked out before the remainder forced their way into the town, and German infantry attacked troop command posts until they were driven out by the gunners. The regiment adopted a position of all-round defense. Finally, a military policeman on a motorcycle got through the surrounding enemy to deliver a day-old order for Summerforce to withdraw. Lieutenant Colonel Howard ordered his men to hold out until nightfall and then destroy all equipment and make their escape. The regiment destroyed its guns and set off in the dark in a northeasterly direction towards Dunkirk, intending to join the evacuation Operation Dynamo. A large number were captured during the day of 30 May 1940 on the Franco-Belgian border near the town of Watou. Although many of the men of 366 Battery were successfully evacuated, very few of 367 Battery escaped capture, and most of the survivors of Cassel spent the remainder of the war as prisoners of war POW. Home defense: 14 officers and 287 men out of an establishment of 580 returned from Dunkirk. After Dunkirk, the priority was the defense of the United Kingdom from the expected invasion, and so there was urgent pressure for the 140th Field Regiment to reform. In mid-June 1940, the men were concentrated away from the invasion front line at Worksop in Nottinghamshire. They moved to Salford on 28 June 1940, and to Castor, Peterborough, in October 1940, where they were re-equipped. They were equipped with 25-pounder field guns when these became available. In December, still as an Army Field Regiment, the regiment was a part of Southern Command, awaiting the arrival of its signal section. It was only by late 1940 that the Royal Artillery could supply enough personnel to begin the process of changing regiments from 2-battery to 3-battery organizations. 3 8-gun batteries were easier to handle, and it meant that each infantry battalion in a brigade could be closely associated with a battery. On 25 January 1941, while the regiment was at Bournemouth, by March it had been assigned to the Corps as part of the Field Army. In May 366, FD Battery was attached to the War Office Reserve, and on 4 June it left for service in Iceland as an independent battery. 366. Battery was replaced on 4 September when 514 Battery was formed at Bradford Down Camp, Dorchester, Dorset, and joined the regiment, which now had its signal section. On 17 February 1942, the regiment's 5th London subtitle was authorised, and by April it had its attached light aid detachment of the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers and 1502 Field Regiment platoon of the Royal Army Service Corps for transport. During the year, the regiment was equipped with the Bishop's self-propelled gun, a 25-pounder gun mounted on an adapted Valentine tank chassis. North Africa. The Corps was assigned to the Allied landings in North Africa Operation Torch as part of 1st Army, and 140th Field Regiment came directly under the command of 1st Army when the latter was formed in the summer. The landings began on 8 November, and the force built up thereafter. 140th Field Regiment went to Algeria in January 1943 as part of 2nd Army Group Royal Artillery Agra. It served in the latter part of the campaign, which ended with the capture of Tunis in May 1943. 140th 5th London Medium Regiment. The regiment was not used in the Allied invasion of Sicily. On 23 September 1943, it was converted to the medium artillery role as the 140th 5th London Medium Regiment, comprising the 367 and 518 medium batteries, while 504 battery was converted to the heavy role and joined the 75th Highland Heavy Regiment. For its new role, the 140th Medium Regiment was equipped with 4.5-inch guns. The regiment landed in Italy before the end of September and joined 8th Army fighting in the Italian campaign. It took part in most of the battles of the campaign. It was part of 2nd Army Group Royal Artillery Agra at the crossing of the Garigliano in January 1944, prior to its involvement in the Battle of Monte Cassino, and in May supported Roman II Polish Corps in the final assaults on Monte Cassino. Disbandment. By the end of 1944, 8th Army was suffering a severe manpower shortage, and the only way to keep infantry and field artillery units up to strength was to redeploy men from surplus anti-aircraft and medium artillery units. The 140th 5th London Medium Regiment was placed in suspended animation on 1 February 1945, and its personnel drafted to other units. The regiment was not reformed when the Territorial Army was reconstituted on 1 January 1947. Legacy. Grand Party. A book written by L.T. Cole Brooks in 1941, entitled Grand Party, records 366 batteries' involvement in the 1940 campaign, including the Dunkirk evacuation. Captivity and the Long March 1940–45. Many of the regular soldiers of the 140th Regiment captured at Dunkirk were sent to Stalag Roman 8B in Silesia as POW. An account of POW life and the forced Long March that took place to escape the Russian advance into Germany in 1945 was written by Private Norman Gibbs. Gunner Eric West, 367 Battery. The story of the 140th Field Regiment's involvement with the BF in 1940 has been published and focuses on the story of Gunner Eric West, including his experience of captivity in Stalag Roman 8B POW camp and subsequent Long March. In Dunkirk's grim days,